The Royal British Legion, every year, the weekend before Remembrance Sunday, hold a service at Royton Cemetery. Long established tradition. Crosses are laid on the graves of the servicemen. The mayor, RBL standers, the vicar, the cadets, they all attend. It has been a long-standing tradition that all the political parties of Royton are represented there and its councillors. In tradition, the Conservatives attended. The Labour Party, Marie and Stephen Bashforth, of who I'm not a fan, recovering from cancer is my information, they both attended. The Royton Independents did not attend. Maggie Hurley and her big team failed to attend. No show.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Sunday, the 5th of November 2023. My name is Raja Miah. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. Fireworks night, Friday before Remembrance Sunday. I can't explain it. I'm sorry, I can't explain it. I cannot explain why the Royton Independents failed to show the Royal British Legion service. Long-standing tradition in Royton. When they come knocking on your door and asking you to vote for them, maybe you can ask them why. After all, they do have a big team. And yes, I am mocking them, but they deserve mocking. They deserve worse than mocking for this, actually. It's completely outrageous. Wednesday night full council meeting, so I've got a packed agenda. I want to go through the meeting. I've spent the full day editing down the video, making a whole host of notes that I want to go through with you. I think, to give everything its due attention, this transmission will probably be split into 2 parts. So I'll get one part done tonight, and I'll try and get another part done either Monday or Tuesday evening. As always, if you find value in these transmissions, so I'm just reaching over to see how many of you have joined me already. There's 93 of you. If you find value in my work, all of my trap work is put out for free. All I ask people to do is to support me by either taking out a subscription of my newsletter. I think it's £3 a month you can pay for, so it's less than £1 a week, or buy me a coffee. If the 93 of you bought me a coffee, I'd be quids in. So I'm lucky if 5 of you buy me a coffee. Over 1,000 of you watched the transmission last Sunday evening. So I know what I bring, and I know the value I bring to this town. You will have seen the emergency transmission. I'll go through all of it now. So those of you who don't want to hang around, I'll go through all of it now, all of the key headlines now, and that way you can make a judgment call. First of all, I'm going to go through Dr. Cho Han's letter to the Prime Minister. Although, well, you'll see. You can make of that what you will once I go through it. Then there's the annual statement by the council leader AROOJ SHAH, which was a disgraceful attempt at grandstanding. There's the questions to the leader from the opposition councillors, which were interesting in the least. Public questions, which were very, very entertaining, as we managed to get a few through, including one from Gary Tarbuck that has exposed Abdul Jabbar for not being honest with the information he relayed via his response. The Conservatives, I've noticed on their social media, have picked up on it and have shared the outrage. Nothing from the Royton Independents, nothing from the Shaw and Crompton Independents, and nothing from the Failsworth Independents. Both factions, neither factions have issued a statement. You'll have to decide why they think £26 million of interest payments a year from your money is not of grave concern. And you'll have to also decide why it's not of grave concern that this figure was kept from you. £26 million of interest payments every year. And rising. And rising. We've got the... there's a very, very interesting written response that most of you will have missed from a question from last time. Remember, the questions that don't get asked this time, there's written responses. Then you've got the actual motions. And the motions, and I've checked and rechecked, and I've had independent sources confirm it with me. The Royton Independent group, Mark Hince, Hurley and Sandra Ball, the independent group, voted with Labour. They even voted for an amendment to their own motion, and when they voted with Labour, they voted against their own election promises. And I'll prove it to you. They voted against their own election promises. And then, of course, we've got some snippets from the portfolio holder reports. 3.5 hours this council meeting was, by the way, and I've had to go through it. So it's it's took me 12 hours or so to edit it down and pull out the key bits. So there's stuff there. There's a very, very, very troubling agenda item that was completely glossed over, which I'll go through, regarding child sex exploitation, and a response from the government, completely glossed over. No one picked up on it. They just accepted it, all of them. And finally, there's the chief executive recruitment, the recorded vote, and the scandal around that. So that's the agenda for this evening and the next meeting. I'll see how much I get through this evening. As many of you know, my mother's very, very unwell. She's still doing well. She's still strong. 3 weeks in. We've had 3 weeks in, just over 3 weeks from when we brought her home, and she wasn't meant to last this long, and she's still, she's still fighting to see as many sunrises as possible, I think. So that's where we are. So I am tired, but I'll get through what I can tonight, and I'll get through what is left. I'm hoping tomorrow night rather than Tuesday night, but these transmissions do leave me drained. There's 112 of you watching right now. I've got 35 likes, and I am going to check. Thank you for the super chat. Oh yeah, and you can do this, Tom. Brilliant. Thank you. For those of you who don't want to buy me a coffee or don't want to go off, you can just click on the super thanks. I don't know how it works, super chat. And $1.99 is taken from you by YouTube. They give me 66% of it for just over £1. And the best thing with this money is it will go towards our Christmas party fund. So we're doing okay for that. So I will share that information with you in the next few weeks or so, as to where I'll book it. And probably with it being closer to Christmas, we'll probably need some numbers, some confirmations, what I tend to do with the money, like I did last time, is I pay for the meal, and you guys, whoever rocks up, just pay for the drinks that you have. So I'm looking forward to our next gathering sometime, hopefully before Christmas. How you doing, Andy? Andy just signed up. Andy became a member. Brilliant. And thank you for sending me a coffee across sea. I'm very, very grateful, because this is how I get by. I should have promoted these super chats earlier, Gary. So thank you, Gary. So there's 2 super chats. I'm £4 up on YouTube. Well, after they take their 50% or so. £2 up maybe, or £2.50 up. Right. How can I put this? To start with, those council meetings, the agendas are too much. When you got 17, 18, 19 agenda items are too much. And when those of you tuned in, you saw that the mayor made reference to it being too much, and a lot of agenda items couldn't be discussed properly the way they should be. That should not happen in a council meeting. That should not happen in a council meeting. And these meetings are once every 6 weeks, 8 weeks. That should not happen. What should happen when the agenda items are that packed is they should split the meetings in 2. They should have the report back, you know, the internal mechanisms of the council on one meeting, and they should have the external public facing issues like the motions and the public questions, the questions to the leaders, on another month. What really needs to happen at Oldham Council is that the full council needs to meet once every month with a split agenda. One half of it public facing 1 month, and then the internal reports and so on, the papers that they want agreeing the second month. That's what should happen. But for that to happen, an opposition councillor needs to have the courage to stand up and request it and explain why it's necessary. They can either lobby in the background with the council when the leaders meet. Remember, there's 4 or 5 leaders now. There's AROOJ SHAH, who meets with the mayor. AROOJ SHAH meets with the mayor. Graham Sheldon's at that meeting. HOWARD SYKES is at that meeting. Mark Hince is at that meeting. And Brian Hoban is at that meeting. That's what should happen. Remember, they all get paid very handsomely. The least paid one is on £10,000, give or take. That's the least. So they should be having that conversation internally. If they can't have that conversation internally, the opposition parties, and this is why we elected the Royton Independents, the Shaw and Crompton Independents there, and both factions of the Failsworth Independents, we elected them to fight for us and fight for what's right in that council chamber. And you can clearly see when the council business, our business, is being rushed, there's not enough time in that meeting. A motion should have been put forward by now. A motion should have been put forward by now. No one's put that motion forward. Now, I know from my own sources that the Labour Party councillors in particular don't like council meetings. The full council meetings. Now, I know why, and you know why. It's because they've never been under this type of scrutiny before in their lives. But they are elected by the public, by you. And you have every right to hold them to account. And now it's got to a stage where the meetings, clearly the mayor's admitting it. HOWARD Sykes made reference to it. Brian Hoban made reference to it. Lewis Quigg made reference to it. There's not enough time in the meetings. They need to meet every month. So why won't they? 60 councillors. What are they on? £1 million between them every year of your money, maybe more. All said and done. How you doing, David? They used to do the crossword before I came along. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the edited bits. I've edited it. And I'll run through what's said at the council meeting. I'll pause it at key spaces, and I'll add some of my commentary. So I know many of you have seen this meeting before, but that's not the point of this. This is an analysis of that meeting. Sheila's been up for 4 months. Brilliant, Sheila. And I see Sue's been up for 3 months, so I'm glad that you guys are members and you're supporting me. Thank you very, very much. 132 of you watching now. You ready, Mark Hince? Unbelievable what those guys did. Unbelievable.
Before we start the meeting, could I ask all present to please treat everyone in this chamber with respect. Item 1, apologies. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Ibrahim, Williamson, Councillor Birch and Councillor Kenya. Declaration of interest.
Okay, first of all, apologies from 4 councillors. Kenyon, Ross Birch, Diane Williamson, and one other. I missed it, but Ibrahim, Naila Ibrahim. Why are councillors who only have to attend one full council meeting once every 2 months or so not even attending full council meetings? It should be mandatory. It should be compulsory. Remember, at some point in this council meeting, they had the gall between them of different political parties to stand up and talk about how children aren't going to school. Well, I agree, children should be in school. But you're adults, you're councillors, you're a bunch of hypocrites. You're not even turning up to your own meetings. Now, I get it if someone's ill, but this isn't ill. They're going on holiday. They're choosing to do other things. No, once you become a councillor and those dates you know. Remember Graham Sheldon? The most important meeting this council has probably ever held. He'd gone on his caravan holiday. Beth Sharp, she'd gone Mexico. And you're right, how many has Hindle attended? I don't know. What I do know, Gary, what I do know is that when you go on the council's webpage, Neil Hindle doesn't even have an email. And the reason he doesn't even have an email is because the council have took it off because he's not been checking his emails. I bet he's been checking to make sure his allowance is paid in his bank. It's absolutely outrageous that councillors, month after month after month, are failing to turn up to the full council meeting. In fact, the question I have is, when was the last time Oldham Council had a full attendance? When was the last time Oldham Council had a full attendance at a full council meeting? It's not apathy, Ian. It's contempt. It's contempt. And he was never there, was he? George Hume was never there. Well, never as in, you know what I mean. Now we move on to the declarations of interests.
Are there any declaration of interest from the members in respect of matters to be determined by the council at this meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. On the motion in regards to the HMOs, Article 14. So I'll be leaving the chamber when that's discussed.
Personal.
Okay, so that is Cammy G, the Conservative Deputy Leader Cammy G, who will be leaving the chamber, he says, on the discussions to do with the HMOs. Oldham Council are yet to explain, and it's the Borough Solicitor Paul Entwistle and the Chief Executive Dirty Harry Caffrell. They're yet to explain why Cammy G's declaration of interest has blacked out, redacted, as though is a member of MI5 or something, blacked out all of his HMO interests. Because he's just confirmed in this meeting he has a conflict of interest. So why is Cammy G's declarations blacked out on his members' declaration of interest? What sort of open, transparent and honest council does that?
Interest on item 12, motion 2.
Conservative?
Same. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same as Councillor Harkness. Personal, non-prejudicial on item 12, motion 2.
Just to make it clear as regards interests, now, it's not personal or prejudicial, it's either a disclosable pecuniary or another registrable interest if it relates to a body upon which you've been appointed by the council, or it's a non-registrable interest.
No, I rent off a housing association.
So they don't even know what the declaration of interests actually are, or what category they fall into. It's unbelievable. They don't even know. And the borough solicitor is having to directly intervene. This man hardly ever draws attention to himself and is having to intervene. And it's not that someone rents off a housing association that's the issue. It's the inability to understand what the actual declaration of interest is. And now this applies to a number of them.
Councillor Glasson?
Personal and pecuniary in motion 2.
Councillor Bishop? Councillor Bishop?
Yeah, same as Louis. Councillor Hamlet.
Councillor Akshay?
Pecuniary interest in item 12, motion 1, as an employee of a housing association.
So remember, those of you, the record number of you who joined me, by the way, for when I went through an agenda, I think something like 600 of you joined me when I went through a council meeting agenda. I said this would cause issue. The HMO, the housing association, stuff would cause issue because too many of our councillors have got an interest. And you can see, as Gary says, the bent whistler doesn't look best pleased because they've been exposed. And Tony's got 5 months. Great. I think someone else has came up with 5 months. Your anniversary is coming up. Brilliant. Okay. Let's carry on.
Thank you. Urgent business. Colleagues, I would like to notify you of a matter which I'm sure you all are aware of, international conflict. Today I'm using my role as a first citizen of Oldham to give voice to the concerns of local people about the humanitarian impact of the ongoing conflict in Palestine and Israel. It's just over the last 3 weeks, more than 8,000 innocent lives have been lost, more than half of those casualties being women and children. As fellow human beings, our hearts ache for the suffering of those who were victims of horrendous attacks in Israel on October 7th, young people murdered, families killed, and taken hostage. And equally, our hearts ache for the thousands of innocent Palestinians who are caught up in the conflict they have not caused. We are sitting while buildings full of civilians are bombed, while neighborhoods are displaced, and while whole families are wiped out in an instant. We cannot, as fellow human beings, sit by while thousands of innocent children continue to be killed. We cannot turn a blind eye to the deaths of innocents in the name of war. This is not a Muslim. Just be clear, this is not a Muslim issue or Jewish issue. It's a humanitarian issue. Just this week, the heavily populated Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza was the target of an Israeli airstrike, killing hundreds of civilians while targeting Hamas. Israeli human rights organization, among many other organizations called B'Tselem, has condemned the human impact of this strike and wider conflict, and I quote saying, "The criminal harm of civilians is intolerable, and the obvious needs to be stated again and again. Not everything is allowed in war. It is the time that in solidarity with our fellow humans and in the spirit of peace, we call for a ceasefire. Tomorrow, I will be writing to Rishi Sunak, our Prime Minister, the most experienced senior politician in the country, to express my concerns about the impact of this conflict and to ask him to use his considerable influence to work towards peace, to ensure humanitarian aid and access for aid workers, and to request a ceasefire to safeguard the lives of the innocent now." The letter will be available in my parlor from lunchtime tomorrow, and I would welcome any member of this chamber who wants to countersign this letter. If they can't physically get here, the letter will be circulated by email, and you can confirm your signature by email, and we will add your name to the letter. And this is the letter, again, to wish to support this humanitarian plea. May I request members now to have 1 minute of silence for all the victims of war. Please stand if you are able to. I'm mindful.
Okay, what's gone on there? I agree with you, Ian. There's war and conflict across the globe. Yes, they supported the Ukrainians, I think. Yeah, they did. There's something similar. But there's war and conflict across the globe. So what has caused this? The Mayor, Dr. Chauhan, and I have no issue with what he's said, by the way. I agree with pretty much everything he's said. It's a human tragedy, what's taking place. I'm not saying one side is right and the other side is wrong, but it's clear there are innocents caught up who have got nothing to do with this. And I've seen the pictures of both what Hamas have done and what the Israelis, the fighter jets in particular, the bombs have done. I'm horrified by all of it. But I'm being honest with you. I issued a statement right at the beginning, because I understand how this works. I'm a Muslim. I was raised a Muslim. I'm a Muslim. And the Palestinian issue it means more to us. And whether that's right or whether that's wrong, I don't know. But at the same time, what these people should be doing, and haven't done, is they should be calling out how the Palestinian issue and the conflict in Gaza is being exploited by extremists. When the grooming gangs, when we raised the grooming gang issue, all the time we were told far right, far right, far right by members in that borough, in that council chamber. When did the members in that council chamber stand up for a minute's silence in solidarity with the, well, they don't even tell us how many, but I'll say it, thousands of children in our town that were groomed and gang raped and failed? No. If you feel the injustice, because I see it from both sides, because I see it from both sides. I feel it from both sides because I see it from both sides. Remember, I'm the only person any of you likely know, who was going to be put in prison for 2 years for objecting to anti-Semitism. They charged me, remember. They didn't just arrest me, they charged me. I was on trial. But I've trained myself. There's 30 years of training in here where I don't just jump into something and I'm manipulated and twisted and pick a side. No, I'm trained well enough to step back and try and look at things objectively. Which is why I'd like to think, which is why all of you trust me. When we pushed and pushed and pushed for justice for the children in our town who are victims of gang rape, far closer than what was happening in Palestine, AROOJ SHAH and her colleagues stood up and repeatedly said far right, far right, far right. And I accept that there were far right elements that attempted to hijack this issue in this town, but we did not let them. We stayed true to our motives, and those who attempted to hijack this issue came and went and failed. Now, I know, as someone who's spoken out about this over 2 years ago, that just as there were far-right elements who sought to exploit the cover-up of children so they could promote their racist agenda, there are also anti-Semites. On the left, and also religious, as in within the Muslim communities. I think there are two types of anti-Semites from my observations. There are the political anti-Semites on the Labour Party left, or the extreme left. And there are those who take their own interpretations of Quranic scriptures to somehow demonize Jewish people. I won't have anything to do with that. And that should have been referenced here by Dr. Chauhan. That should have been referenced here. And I'll speak for you, because some of you are uncomfortable, because we live in that world of, oh, they might think I'm a racist, they might think I'm an anti-Semite. I've already been accused of being an anti-Semite. I'm like thinking, great, call me an anti-Semite. See if you risked prison for objecting to attacks on Jewish people. You judge me by the conviction of my deeds, not just my words, my deeds. I was willing to go to prison because I objected to a slogan, the way it was used, at the time it was used, that now across the country people accept is bordering on hate speech, or it is actual hate speech. The river to the sea slogan. I objected to that. Remember, that's why I was arrested. It just took everyone else 2 years to catch up. Now let's have a look at this letter. Let's have a look at this letter. See what you make of this letter. You can see that, yeah. Mayor's Parlour. Mr. Rishi Sunak MP. Prime Minister's Office. Outrageous, Dr. Chauhan. I don't know if you've done this on purpose, Dr. C, but it's absolutely outrageous. He is the Prime Minister and you will address him as the Prime Minister. I don't care if you don't like the guy. I've worked for Prime Ministers I've not been keen on, but I've always made reference to them as Prime Minister. Sending a letter to Mr. Rishi Sunak MP, Prime Minister's Office, is disgraceful. He's not even addressing him as the Prime Minister. And of course he begins the letter, Dear Rishi Sunak MP. So it's not accidental. You don't even have the respect or the decency. And Dr. Chauhan might have got this wrong, but there's people in the council office, Harry Cafferel, etc., etc., who should have addressed this. You can't send a letter to him as Dear Rishi Sunak MP. You can't. And then Dr. Chauhan refers to himself as first citizen of Oldham. As first citizen of Oldham. He isn't the first citizen of Oldham. We don't have a first citizen of Oldham. And if he is, someone tell me if I've got it wrong. Someone who understands our democratic norms, tell me if I've got it wrong. But he's not the first citizen of Oldham. I write to share with you the thoughts and concerns of the residents of this borough about the ongoing humanitarian impact of the conflict in Palestine and Israel. It's exactly that, Gary. It's first to something, mate. People across this borough have shared their feelings of sadness and their feelings of helplessness. Well, actually, it should be their feelings of sadness and helplessness, but you can repeat that if you want, as they witness the impact this conflict is having on innocent people across Palestine and Israel. In the spirit of humanity and compassion, I am asking you as our Prime Minister to do everything in your power to work towards a long-term political solution to this ongoing conflict, to increase the amount of humanitarian and to increase the amount of humanitarian aid available to all those affected, and to request a ceasefire to safeguard the lives of innocent civilians being caught up in this conflict. Yours sincerely, Zahid Chauhan. Listen, mate. You're sending a letter to the Prime Minister without making reference to him as a Prime Minister, asking him to do things that your own Labour Party leader won't agree to. Your own Labour Party leader won't agree to these things. And in fact, your own Labour Party leader's position is, or was, that none of you talk about these things. And the only reason, I sincerely believe, the only reason Dr. Chauhan has done this, and you'll see what AROOJ SHAH has done next, it's grandstanding. They know this will have no impact. This is an attempt to appease the very angry Muslims in their own community, appease them to say, look, we're doing something. But unfortunately, this appeasement hasn't worked because no one believes them. And all of you need to understand this. The Muslims that are angry in this town and across this country, the ones who are political and are angry, have every right to be angry because you don't know what's gone on in these communities. The Labour Party has promised them for the last 50 years that they will take care of the Muslims. They are on the side of the minority. The Labour Party has promised them representation. We will stand for you. And now with an election coming, a general election coming, and the history, the proven racists, aren't they? The Labour Party have been proven racist because of their anti-Jewish position, historically. Now we'll talk about Cameron Gafford, Denise, as well. Because I've had Warren on to me, and sorry Warren, he phoned me yesterday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning. He phoned me on Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday at very early on. And it's okay, you can call me. It's no problem, any of you can call me. But what do you want me to do? Cameron Gafford apparently was wearing a Palestinian flag around his wrist. Well, what's it got to do with me? What do you want me to do? You want me to issue a position? I'll issue a position. I think it's grandstanding. I think it's absolute nonsense politics, exploitation, it's pandering. If Cameron Gafford genuinely felt that his political party, the Conservatives, did not represent the views of his constituents, the Muslims who voted for him in Hollywood, then Cameron Gafford and his three politicians, all three of them, the Conservatives, would resign and sit in that council chamber as independents. Wearing a scarf or a flag round your wrist, it's just gesture politics, as is this letter. And I'm not in the business of gesture politics or populist decisions where a mob dictate what you do and what you don't do, because that's not leadership. Leadership is looking people in the eye, those who've supported you, and telling them they're wrong when they're wrong. You can believe it's inciting violence if you want, Warren. I actually don't think wearing a flag around your wrist is inciting violence, because, and I'll tell you why. We banned a Palestinian flag or a councillor from wearing a Palestinian flag. Oh, so it's inciting violence. How long do you think before they come for you? When you have the British flag, the Union flag wrapped round you, or the St. George's Cross or something like that wrapped round you. For me, free speech is absolute as long as you're not inciting violence, and I don't think it is. And I never think the waving of flags is inciting violence. Waving a machete is inciting violence. But if they wanted to do something, Cameron Gafford could have stepped down. If it was genuine. He'd be the first Conservative to step down, because all I've seen is Labour councillors step down. If the Conservatives, Graham Sheldon, remember, the leader of the Conservatives, he was sat next to him. He was sat next to Beth Sharp. They all saw what he had round his wrist. Why do you think they haven't suspended him? Tell me, why do you think they haven't suspended him? Graham Sheldon, in my opinion, hasn't suspended him because he'd stopped being the leader of the opposition party and he'd lose £20,000. That's what I think is why he's not been suspended. And if Cameron Gafford had been suspended, the other two would walk with him. And I don't think they'd walk very far. They'd walk across to the Labour Party side. Because in our town, the blue and red rosettes don't mean everything. It's just one identity, a subservient identity to these people. Warren, if you think a Jewish wedding being booked in the Queen Elizabeth Hall on the night has in any way linked to a councillor having a scarf, a flag wrapped round his wrist in a formal meeting in the council chamber was inciting violence, I'm not with you. I don't believe that. And I don't believe that because I'm genuinely, as someone who gets dragged off out of my house repeatedly by the police on trumped up charges, I know firsthand where this leads to. So please, if you genuinely believe someone's inciting violence, then go for it. Phone the police. Phone the police. But Graham Sheldon should have been doing something. Is it allowed? Is it not allowed? I don't know. Well, you're entitled to your opinion as well, Warren. If you believe having a flag wrapped round your wrist is inciting violence, then that's not a place I want to go down as a society that I live in. Because I guarantee you they will come for you next. How do you think they get these laws across? They get these laws across by finding something that we naturally disagree with to say, see that, and then the precedent is set. Then the laws have been introduced, and then they use them against us. If you're being disturbed by YouTube ads, Sheila, and all you need to do is press skip ads. I think they're set for every 30 minutes or so. And it's the minimum I could get away with YouTube. So that's my position on this letter, on the wearing of a flag around your wrist, on the Facebook statements that a couple of councillors have done. It's all grandstanding. Because if they believed this to be true, then they should be resigning from their parties and standing as independents. They should be doing what their voters have been asking them to do. Represent them. No. And I think that their voters won't fall for this. And I'm not hiding on my strategy. I've made it clear to all of you, I'm not in the business of manipulation or being devious. It's in what I've written repeatedly. The Gaza betrayal, as the Muslims, the Pakistanis and the Bangladeshis in Oldham see it, the Gaza betrayal by the Labour Party is their line in the sand, in the same way the betrayal of the white working class girls were the line in the sand for many of you. And they need to feel it. Like you needed to feel it. And now and then, My hope is enough of them will never go back because they know they've been lied to, they've been deceived, and that the Labour Party has done nothing other than exploit them. Warren, if you think it's inviting violence, phone the police, report it as a crime. Exactly. Imran. My Bangladeshi friend, Imran Chowdhury, is the one who wrote in a public question, one of the few Asians who've written in a public question holding Abdul Jabbar to account of fraternising with a convicted sex offender. And he's clear. These are self-serving, career-making politicians who do not care about us. And to the rest of you, stay out of it. Stay out of it. Only this evening, as I was coming live, Burnley is coming closer. A whole host of Labour councillors have resigned in Burnley. This pressure is not going away. And Jim McMahon is missing, hiding.
Mindful that we have very packed agenda, but I think it's very important humanitarian issue. So I'm offering if the group leaders want to say anything. Councillor Shah first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do ask myself what kind of world we've created where advocating for the...
So the thing you've got to understand with AROOJ SHAH is Dr. Chauhan, as the mayor, made it look like he was just bringing it up as urgent business. And it's clear as it goes on, no one else knew he was doing that, but AROOJ SHAH did. And she'd had a speech written for her. And in that speech, which spectacularly backfired, by the way, and I'll play it, I want you to hear it. She blames the government. She blames the government instead of holding her own party to account, her own leader, who supported, as her constituents see it. Forget what I think. Her own constituents see it. Keir Starmer supported war crimes. Collective punishment is a war crime. And he's been desperately trying to backpedal on that since. She's trying to twist it. This woman, this council leader, is something extraordinary. Listen to this. And it was planned. This was a ploy involving Dr. Chauhan, AROOJ SHAH, and whoever else was in that room when that decision for that letter was taken. Otherwise, she would not have a pre-prepared speech to read off because she's not capable of speaking from the heart. I question whether she has a heart.
Safety of children and other innocents has become an issue to be debated. An issue that is contentious because it absolutely isn't. It should be incredibly simple because all human life is precious. Mr. Mayor, the Prime Minister, during a panel discussion with Benjamin Netanyahu on his recent visit to Israel, said, "We want you to win." I reject this sentiment, not because I don't recognise or appreciate the impact of the horrendous attacks of October the 7th, because there are no winners in war. Instead, there are people who lose. They lose their children, they lose their families, they lose their homes, and they lose their safety. Every single day, hundreds of innocent Palestinians are losing their lives Their homes are being bombed. The hospitals they so desperately need are being targeted. Even refugee camps, as you mentioned, are not safe. The international community needs to be working towards a ceasefire. They must work towards access to adequate humanitarian aid.
Excuse me, I was eating a chocolate. And I wanted to pause it, and then I realised I was eating a chocolate. You can see it, can't you? The frustrations shared by many people, in particular non-Muslims. And I know that to get to what we want, or what I want, which is an end to the killing of children, we have to, whether we like it or not, depending on which side you're on, but it doesn't matter whether you like it or not, you've got to accept exactly that, Raymond. Took the words out of my mouth. You've got to accept that there are Israeli victims here as well. Israeli children, Israeli young people. But they can't, you see. They can't. In my opinion, combination of their own prejudices and their own the lens they see this through, and also because of where the pressure's coming from. Because for them it's about votes. They've got to balance this thing about staying in power from the bloc vote that supports them, but also not ruining their careers because Starmer won't let them, won't promote them if they step out of line. So they're being squeezed. And you can see her squirming. And yeah, I go back to that. It's this bit. Mate, you're spot on. You're spot on. Well, give her a chance. Maybe she'll redeem herself whilst we listen to it.
Work towards a peaceful solution to this conflict and for the release of the hostages and for the long-term safety and security of Palestinians and Israelis alike. And to the community in Oldham, as a leader, we must not allow anyone to use this issue to stoke tensions between communities.
Okay. She makes reference to hostages. But you'll see there's nothing about Hamas. But she's trying to twist it. Immediately she's trying to twist it. And he's now talking about people using this issue to stoke division between communities. No, AROOJ SHAH. What I'm doing is delivering leaflets through every Muslim letterbox, making it clear who you are and what your party has supported, as I'm allowed to in a democratic society. I am making sure that every Muslim in this town will know that what Keir Starmer said, and the silence of all the Labour Party politicians who rely on the bloc vote. That's not stoking division. What are you going to do? Go running to the police again? Oh, what? The other side of your face perhaps has drooped. That's my fault. This is democracy. This is called campaigning. Go and have a look all over social media, all over the news. This is what people are doing because they feel you have failed to represent them. And this pre-prepared false waterworks, teardrop, it's not going to work. And I know it's not going to work because my sources in Glodick, in St. Mary's, are telling me they've had enough of her. They're outraged by what she's done. 2 years ago, she was front and centre having the Elbit factory shut down. Why is she now not going to the marches? What's changed from 2 years ago to now? You're happy to campaign to close down a factory, but you're not happy to attend a march or a rally or a vigil What's happened? What's happened, AROOJ SHAH? And she can't read speeches, by the way. Because whoever's wrote it for her has wrote it in such a way where she's meant to pause at certain times and increase her pitch at certain times. AROOJ, what you need to do, sweet, is get 2 highlighters. One highlighter where you're meant to pause and highlight the word where you pause on, and another highlighter where you highlight where you're meant to lift your voice, and possibly a third highlighter when you reach advanced level where you're meant to slow down speaking. I used to teach this to 12-year-olds. Idiot.
We must reject the implication, Mr. Mayor, that comes directly from the Conservative Home Office Minister, Suella Braverman, that to march for peace, to march in solidarity with one's fellow humans, is a criminal act or is somehow hateful. We have undoubtedly seen an increase in both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic sentiment, online and elsewhere. As a borough,
we have seen rising anti-Semitism and Islamophobia online and elsewhere. What's elsewhere? In the virtual world and the real world? Where's elsewhere? Scaremongering. Scaremongering. And the reason she's scaremongering is to try and shut down debate and discussion. She doesn't want you, me, or any one of us talking about it. Now, I believe, as adults, we can and should talk about these issues, because when we talk about these issues, we take it away from the extremists who only flourish where there's a vacuum when people aren't talking about this, when legitimate mainstream voices like ours aren't being heard. I've just had an exchange with Warren. I disagreed with him, he disagreed with me. Fine. But she wants debate and discussion shuts down. And she now starts off blaming the Prime Minister, and she blames Suella Braverman, who made reference to these as hate marches. And the reason why the Home Secretary made reference to them as hate marches was to do with the specific chanting of from the river to the sea, which I know it, my interpretation of it historically, and something interesting has gone on here with the attempted redefinition of a term. My understanding of it historically is very it's racist. It calls for the eradication of Israel, because from the river to the sea, what's in between the river and the sea, Palestine's to be free, is the nation of Israel. I believe in a Palestinian state, but I do not believe that a Palestinian state is to be created at the expense of the genocide of Jewish people, or vice versa. You understand? It's not either or. They want to make it into an either or. Those with a vested interest in this want to make it into an either or conversation debate, or don't speak about it at all. I want us to speak about it. And as a human being, I can see the human tragedy of all of it. And I have empathy for a child, regardless of what faith he or she might have, who's caught up in this. Warren is indeed looking very interested in the back. But this was staged, remember. This was pre-planned and prepared, hoping a combination of Dr. Chauhan and AROOJ SHAH and the minute silence, they were hoping it would get the Pakistanis in particular back on side. It hasn't worked.
Come together, and we must reject this. To call it out wherever and whenever we see it. As humans, we cannot help but be moved, be saddened by the human impact of this conflict. The images of horror we are seeing.
You're so much moved, you had to read it off a script. That's how moved she was. She had to read the lines of a piece of paper in front of her. That's how moved she was.
Naturally draw feelings of fear, of anger, of helplessness, and overwhelmingly of sadness. At the most fundamental level, any of those people could be us. It could be our children, it could be our family, and it could be our friends.
Okay. At the most fundamental level, those children could be ours. Well, where were you when our children were being groomed and gang raped? Where were you then? On our doorstep, AROOJ SHAH, were your Labour Party member, Daddy Ahmed, Shabir Ahmed, was working for the council with his little black book, accessing children. Where was this speech then? Where was the outrage at the cover-up of the gang rape of our children? Where was your statement then? And yes, I'm angry. Because what she's demonstrating here is that she knows that without the bloc vote, the Labour Party are nothing, and she knows that it doesn't matter what happens to white children because you lot don't turn up and vote enough. And when you do, you're too divided. She knows. Where was, indeed, Denise, where was the statement about Rod Blythe? 20-year councillor. You won't even tell us where Rod Blythe accessed children in this council, in this town. So every one of you who feel uncomfortable with this, you have a right to be uncomfortable. Because it's not equitable, is it? That's the fundamental issue with this town. Is a sense of injustice, how some groups matter more than others. And to my Muslim friends, you don't matter to her. Or Dr. Chauhan or the Labour Party. You know you don't. Because if you did, you'd be resigning just like how they've done in Burnley. Burnley Council leader and 10 councillors, that's what I was making reference to, Karen. It just popped up on my phone just before I went live. And that's exactly right, Susan. She's looking after herself, doesn't care about anyone in this town. Do you see? And those of you who claim I'm not taking a side, I am taking a side. I'm taking our side.
That shared humanity, that compassion and that empathy is why conflicts that are geographically so far away feel so close to home. It is why debate...
That's not true. That's not true. The conflict in Palestine have to be honest. You feel close to home because 1, the victims are Muslim. 2, the perpetrators are Jewish. 3, there's an undercurrent of anti-Semitism. And 4, yes, there is a sense of injustice across the globe. But don't for 1 second omit that some people matter more. I mean, it's a failure of multiculturalism, isn't it? It's a failure of multiculturalism, that there's a hierarchy to what sort of offences what sorts of wars, atrocities that we feel more towards than others. It's our failure. It's a failure in our state. Some more.
Discussions and protests on our streets are so emotive and so passionate. While it is entirely natural and right to fight for the rights, safety and protection of our fellow human beings, we must also extend that compassion to understand the fear, the hurt and the sadness of others and to make space to hear each other with respect. Let Oldham, Mr Mayor, be that place where we open up these conversations on the basis of our shared humanity with the hope that what is achieved is peace. In the short term, so that we're able to...
Let Oldham be that place where we open up the conversation. So how are you opening up the conversations? You're not. How are you opening up the conversations, AROOJ SHAH? It's just blah, 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 blah. Rhetoric. Nonsense. Someone else has written this. She has no idea what she's even saying. How are you opening up the conversations to the angry young people in Glodick? How are you opening up the conversations to the aunties, the old ladies in Werneth? How are you opening up the conversations to my uncles in Coldust? Or in Coppice? Or Chadderton? How? Oh yeah, Louise. They're opening up the conversation so much they'd reduce public questions to 15 minutes. How are you opening up the conversations? Have you had the courage to go out to the mosques, the community centres? No. There's a mosque, the Medina Mosque in Coldust. I've been to the Medina Mosque in Coldust, not recently, but I've prayed at the Medina Mosque in Coldust. It's made the news recently. Yvonne Eric got in touch with me. I saw her on the tweets. Angry at it. There was this... They put up this... they put the Friday sermons on the Facebook page. And someone had taken the sermon and chopped it up. And... you know, what's said doesn't come across well. And it's translated underneath. Now, I don't understand the language, first of all, to accept whether or not the translation's honest. Because we all know there's also a propaganda war being played out here. But what he's also said in English doesn't come across well. I've been in between doing what I've had to do over the last few weeks. I've reached out to a friend of mine at the mosque, and I'll go and see him and ask him what on earth's gone on. One of the lads at the mosque I grew up with, who's involved in the running of the mosque I grew up with. I made that phone call at 10 o'clock on Saturday night because some of you had been in touch. I issued a statement. What sort of leadership is this? AROOJ SHAH, the leader of Oldham Council, issued a statement when some children couldn't do their Friday prayers inside school, so they did it in the rain outside. Well, equally, a significant amount of our people in this town are deeply concerned because it's made national news, international news, of a Friday sermon at one of our mosques. You should be there. It's Abdul Jabbar's ward. Abdul Jabbar should be there. What sort of leadership is this? Maybe they're more, you know, maybe if someone promised some, no, it's not even a laughing matter, is it? I can't even make a joke because it's not a matter to make a joke over. They're not facilitating conversations and debates. They're running away from them, trying to shut them down. And the only conversations they want is the conversations on their term in their own way. And it's how hatred breeds and extremism flourishes. And it concerns me. It concerns me deeply. Because I want that conversation. with the young people. Why do you feel so much about this issue? And I want them to unpack it. And 30 years of doing this. And it's a humbling journey. I don't believe I've ever changed one person. I believe people change themselves. And for people to be able to change themselves and their views and their opinions, someone with courage and conviction needs to engage with them. And no one is. No one is. And that's why it's becoming more and more polarized.
That the impact of innocent people now is minimised, and so that in the long term, Palestinians and Israelis feel safe, feel secure, and have their rights respected and preserved. I welcome this act of humanitarian solidarity from our Mayor. Our thoughts and our prayers are with all those that are impacted by this ongoing conflict. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Leaders' Annual Statement is traditionally an opportunity to share the successes we've had as a borough throughout the six...
Okay. So I've moved it on. I've moved it on to the Leaders' Annual Statement. I've moved it on to the Leaders' Annual Statement. Just pause for a second. Park Palestine, Park Gaza, Park Israel. My own thoughts are, as I shared with my friends who asked me for a position on this at the beginning, pray, support the aid agencies, and put political pressure on your elected representatives. Those are the three things I say to all of you. Her annual statement. Once every year she goes off and does this. There's 237 of you who've joined me this evening so far. If you're finding value in this transmission, please consider buying me a coffee. Look, be honest, no one else is, you're not going to have this debate or discussion with anyone else. No one else is going to do this for you. No one else is going to critique this, analyse this. There's clearly value here, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Support me. Coffee costs you £2, or you can press the super chat or something button on your screens, and YouTube will take $1.99 off you and give me some money back. And the money back I get from YouTube actually doesn't even come to me. It goes towards the kitty for our Christmas meal. So please, if you're finding value, support me. Or at the very least, press the like button. Like and share. There's 48 of you. And someone's just pressed the unlike button. It's fine. I'm not for everyone. I'm not for everyone. And it's fine. I don't want to be for everyone.
6 months since the start of the municipal year, but it's also an opportunity to reflect on our progress against the longer-term ambitions and strategies that we set out. To reflect on the last 6 months is to reflect on a list of promises that we've kept. I established my leadership and the work of this administration on absolute resident focus, on the needs of local people and on delivering for them and with them. We set out to be a council that fights for local people, a council that is on the side of residents, and one that actually listens. We have heard consistently from local people that they love and treasure their local areas. They hate it when those areas are disrespected or feel unloved, and they want streets and parks and green spaces that they can be proud of. Our Don't Trash Oldham programme is cleaning local grot spots, transforming streets and neighbourhoods.
So that's all she's got. Don't Trash Oldham, which is it's ended up being a multi-million-pound failure. That's what Don't Trash Oldham is. And she wants to talk about the achievements she's done and the priorities of the council And she starts with talking about cleaning up litter off the streets. Particularly in areas where it doesn't matter how many times you clean them, the actual people who live in those communities make them messy again. What happened this time last year? Their own report exposed how they'd failed children. I want you to hear if she makes any reference in her annual statement to safeguarding children and justice for those who have failed. Listen.
Tracking down and prosecuting fly tippers and working in and with communities across the borough to improve their local areas. Local people told us they value green space. That is one of the things that makes them the most proud of their areas. In response, we've begun the largest tree planting programme undertaken in generations, with thousands of new trees due to be planted in coming months across the borough, making our local areas more attractive and contributing to delivering cleaner air too. We're also making investments into much-loved local parks, including the reopening of a restored conservatory in Alexandra Park and a new play area for Daisy Nut Country Park. And we've launched a £500,000 scheme to fund more of the local projects that really matter to local people through our Local Improvement Fund. This money supports locally grown bids and projects developed between local councillors and residents to improve their area. It might be funding for a local club or charity, highways improvements or investment in parks, but we know that helping reward and reflect people's ambitions for their own neighbourhoods is really important.
Okay, notice again how she's talking in the abstract and the future sense. What have they actually done? What have they actually done? And indeed, Sheila, she went to a party. She celebrated her election victory with a convicted fly tipper. She celebrated her election victory with a convicted fly tipper. Abdul Jabbar, Evan, my sources tell me, and I'll tell you, when she demoted Abdul Jabbar, because she got rid of him from deputy leader and put her mate Shahid Mushtaq in, when she got rid of Abdul Jabbar, she still made Abdul Jabbar sit next to her, like, you're mine. Yeah, you, sit there next to me. It's a power thing. It's a power thing. She's showing Abdul Jabbar who's in charge.
In May, the Department for Education approved plans for a new sixth form college here in Oldham, to be run by Eton and Star Academies. The college will offer a choice for students studying A-levels and will focus on supporting young people from a range.
Star Academies that Harry Caffrell has a vested interest in. Yes, the chief executive has a conflict of interest.
Backgrounds into the best universities. As part of their plans, we will see a new town centre campus built. Eton will provide access to its online teaching and to other learning opportunities, as well as providing additional funding of around £2,000 per student, in addition to DFE funding. What an opportunity and what an option for our young people to choose should they wish to do so. In summer, we opened the first of 6 new family hubs at Beaver Children's Centre in St Mary's. The upgraded centre offers access to family health services, support groups and family events and activities all on one amazing site. The launch was such an amazing day, highlighting the real difference that services like these make to the everyday lives of local people. I met with those families whose children were born during COVID and
she's opened a children's centre. A community centre. These have been open for decades, generations. They cut them back because they chose to cut them back. And now she's celebrating opening one. And she's giving a personal case study. I met with her mother.
had missed out on really crucial chances to meet other parents, take part in other groups, and seek support with health or parenting issues, and who were so excited by the opportunities the centres would offer them. For a generation in the 1990s and 2000s, Sure Start centres were a lifeline, and I know our new family hubs will reignite those opportunities for people across Oldham. And us keeping our promises and delivering for local people isn't all about new projects, openings and campaigns. It's also about doing what's right for local people and local services that are struggling. Recently, the council has to step in to ensure the safety and security of over 100 older people and vulnerable adults who were residents of Chadderton Total Care, a privately run care home. The home, facing unprecedented financial pressure due to inflation, was on the brink of closure, with 100 incredibly vulnerable local people, many with dementia and some at the end of their lives, who would have had to be transferred to other facilities.
So what she's owning up to there, and it comes out later how much you paid, is that the council bailed out the private sector. The Oldham Council bailed out Total Care. Instead of just letting it go bust and then buying it back for £1, it bailed them out with millions of pounds of your money. I wonder who facilitated that arrangement.
Possibly because of the scarcity of care home places as far as Lancashire and Yorkshire. As a council, we stepped in, we purchased and we took over the delivery of services at that home, securing 200 jobs and the stability of care for those 100 people. This situation shows the fragility of the care sector, not just here in Oldham, but nationwide, and the pressures on local authorities who have to step in where the private sector fails for the good of local people. But it also shows the strength, the resilience and the ability of the public sector to put people first always. I've been saddened by the ongoing impact of the cost of living crisis in Oldham, and I've been heartened by the difference of our £3 million cost of living support package that has been made available to local people. Our helpline and engagement teams have supported thousands of residents to access support with energy bills, access to food in a crisis, money advice and support via Welfare Rights or the Citizens Advice Bureau, or even emergency help to meet immediate needs like families without nappies or baby milk. And that need has undoubtedly changed. Staff in our services and the voluntary sector tell me we are seeing more people in need month after month, not because of some one-off crisis, but simply because they're incomings, and that's not just those on benefits, but people who work too. They're not enough and they're not meeting their basic housing, heating and food needs. In addition, we're seeing levels of housing debt, both rent and mortgages, rising at alarming rates, with homelessness numbers.
Okay, so now she wants to talk about national issues. The national cost of living, your mortgage, your interest rates. What on earth is this woman ranting on about? What has that got to do with your council tax and what you do locally? Remember, later we found out that they're paying £26 million a year in interest. Complete car crash of an annual statement so far, read off pieces of paper prepared for her earlier. Vote for me and I'll look after your grandma. No, I don't think it quite works that way. I'm sure they're still taking the money off these people. They've taken up over the running of a private sector business with no experience or understanding of what it will entail. It's like a shopping centre. You can do everything apart from what they're meant to be doing. Nothing yet on the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children, or what steps, what actions this council has done to safeguard children in the future, with the last leader having stood up and apologised to the town for failings. Nothing yet on the actions they've taken.
and those in temporary accommodation increasing month on month. And for those in settled housing, we are also seeing challenges with housing standards, increasing issues of damp and mould, houses in poor states of repair. Living situations have a real impact, Mr. Mayor, on people's quality of life and on people's immediate health. These challenges are some of the biggest facing us as a town. As you will hear from the range of motions and housing issues before us on this agenda, and as a council, we can't just listen, we have to respond. That's why tonight I'm announcing a housing summit, which will bring together landlords, both private and social, the council housing and enforcement services, and charities and the voluntary sector organisations to develop a better plan for better housing standards. A plan that will...
She's chuffed a bit with her announcement she's calling a meeting. AROOJ SHAH, the leader of Oldham Council, is calling a meeting. And she thinks calling a meeting needs to be in her annual speech. She's calling a meeting. Wow.
Insecure housing and to reduce homelessness for Oldham's people. I'm confident that, as with the cost of living crisis, we can make a difference to these issues locally, as well as lobbying for national changes to support us. On this and many other issues facing local people, we are determined as a council to make the right decisions that will improve lives for long term, whether that's on education, whether it's on housing, whether it's on jobs, whether it's on health, or whether it's on regeneration. We've continued on the course we set through our Creating a Better Place programme of work, because developing a new purpose, a renewed future for the town centre is vital to the creation of jobs, vital for the attraction of new businesses and the support of the existing ones. As part of this, our recently agreed partnership with Muse, a company with an amazing track record led by born and bred Oldhamer and a massive ambassador for the town, Phil Mayle, will create 2,000 homes, essentially a brand new high quality neighbourhood at the heart of Oldham Town Centre.
You heard it there first. You heard it there first. 2,000 homes, and she's calling it a high quality neighbourhood in the heart of the town centre. The town centre with 2,000 homes will mean it is no longer a town centre. 2,000 homes. High quality homes. So I want to know how many of those 2,000 homes people will actually buy AROOJ SHAH. Not welfare dependent houses, overspill from coal dust. And honouring the promises to the block vote. How many of those houses will go on the market? And remember, Sean Fielding claimed that people would choose to live there in Oldham Town Centre in these 2,000 homes rather than live in Saddleworth. I want to see the council's projections of how many of those high quality homes, high quality neighbourhoods will involve, at the very least, mixed tenure with homeowners living there. Never mind homeowners who choose to live there instead of choosing to live in Saddleworth. It's absolute la-la land nonsense. La-la land nonsense. And indeed, he may have been born here, but he doesn't live here. And she claimed at the time that what part of the reasons why that company got the contract was because of the company's links with Oldham. That is actually, by the way, unlawful. Particularly when you're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds. It's just nonsense. And still, Sheila, still no mention of our children. Still no mention of our children.
These homes, alongside a new 6-acre urban park and improvements to cycling, walking and public transport routes, will breathe new life into Oldham, bringing new residents, new visitors and new businesses.
Okay, I want to know something. And I'm going to ask one of you to submit it as a public question. How many people cycle in Oldham? How many council staff cycle in Oldham? How many people cycle to work? They must have done a survey. Surely if they're spending millions of pounds on cycle provision, they must have done some audit to determine how many people currently cycle regularly to work. Do you, AROOJ SHAH? I can't see a Jimmy Choos coping too well on a bicycle. How about you, Abdul Jabbar? Do you cycle?
The work on Spindles to transform it into a multi-use office, retail and leisure facility with increased footfall is well underway, with a new office space due to open early next year, including a brand new front door for the council and partner services at the heart of the town centre. The new home for Oldham's Market and a brand new event space, a replacement for the Queen Elizabeth Hall, is being constructed at the Parliament Square, or in old money, the town square side of Spindles, and is due to be completed in 2025. Market traders are excited for the move, with all current traders having expressed interest in pictures at the new site. The old library restoration.
See, complete vague. How many market traders have expressed interest for pictures? How many? Won't answer the specifics, will she? Do you see? They can't do specifics because it's waffle. Indeed, mate. How many council staff have used a cycle to work scheme?
Into a new civic hub is well underway and due to complete during 2024. The new public building will feature meeting spaces which will be available to the public, as well as being used for the civic events and also other meetings. And in the meantime, we continue the delivery of our events programme across the town centre and beyond. Last weekend, I had the pleasure of attending the first Oldham Half Marathon in 4 years. It brought together thousands and thousands of people from Oldham, from across Greater Manchester.
It brought together thousands and thousands of people. Well, what was the number? Can't even give the number. And it's just another, I don't mean it disrespectfully, it's just an event, isn't it? You have a carnival, you have a half marathon, so what? What does it do?
And from elsewhere in the country to run what I am sure is one of the most challenging courses out there. But alongside those people were spectators and others enjoying our Halloween festivities and spending money in our local businesses. Similarly, our upcoming Christmas events, Festival Oldham, illuminating community-led events like Oldham Pride and the Whip Friday band contest bring new visitors every year to enjoy what Oldham has to offer. Those events and our ongoing work to promote Oldham are more vital now than they have ever been, because we know that while our regeneration work, and admittedly the inevitable disruption it causes has to happen, we also know that we need to offer something that keeps people coming back to Oldham, keeps people choosing to shop here and to spend their time here. And we know that this strategy is working. Our evaluations show that each event we put on brings in an economic benefit to local businesses that far exceeds the cost of putting them on.
That's nonsense. That statement is absolute nonsense. What she just said there about we know this strategy worked because our evaluation, we've evaluated ourselves. We've evaluated ourselves and we know these events are value for money because it brings more money in than what we're spending on them, regardless of whether you want us to spend that money of your council tax on this or not. It's absolute nonsense. We'll work on that as we move forward with a series of freedom of information requests and public questions, all as a consequence of outcomes from these speeches. Because I don't believe she's being honest. Do you? Do you believe she's being honest? Do you believe she's even read what she's reading before? Do you believe she's wrote this? Who believes she's wrote this? She's good at tricking but not treats.
Putting our money where our mouth is and investing in this borough is essential in driving investment from businesses, both existing businesses to expand and new businesses to settle here in our borough. Building new homes is essential. It's essential to meet the growing need for quality local housing for the next generations of Oldham. Investing in this place that we love called home is the right thing to do. Establishing and driving a future vision for our town is the right thing to do. Creating the opportunity for high quality, well-paying jobs and supporting businesses to thrive in the long term is the right thing to do. But that doesn't mean it's always the easy thing to do. We know that while these works are completed, there's an element of disruption. We know that new housing isn't universally popular despite clear local need. We know that the proof has to be in the pudding in terms of real impact on local people, but we believe in what we have set out to achieve, and we are going to hold steady and achieve it for local people.
Okay, you're going to achieve all of this when your track record for the last 30 years is failure. On pretty much every big scheme, failure, failure, failure. That's your track record. So why is it different this time, AROOJ SHAH, when you failed on every occasion in the past? You couldn't even get your town centre regeneration done, could you? What was it, a game changer? You announced it yourself as well, AROOJ SHAH. You walked up and down those streets. Why don't you talk about the failure of Mumps Bridge? Come on. What have you learnt from those failures? I'll tell you what the people have said to you. Is to stop making promises of what you're going to do, what you're going to do, what you're going to do. This entire speech is full of things that they're going to do. The annual speech is not meant to be of what you're going to do. She said so herself at the beginning. It's to reflect on the year. What have you done? Yeah.
Or future generations. As we are seeing in Westminster, the easiest thing for any leader and leading party, any administration to do is to be led by the most current viewpoint, by what is politically expedient and in the short term, and in doing so lose track of the overall vision. Whether it's cancelling HS2 or reneging on vital net zero promises, we have example after example of national failure. Well, we have example after example after example of local failure, you muppet. Let's deflect and blame the Conservative government. The Conservative government isn't why Mumps failed. The Conservative government isn't why you bought a shopping centre for a record amount during a bloody global pandemic. The Conservative government isn't the reason why you're paying £26 million a year in interest payments. The Conservative government isn't why you got caught out on the closure of the Colosseum. The Conservative government isn't why Hotel Future failed, or some other thing failed, or another thing failed. Gary, I think that's spot on, mate. It's like a crashed hot air balloon deflating its hot air. A big bag of wind. That's what AROOJ SHAH is. A big bag of wind. Example of easy short-term decisions being made nationally, but we won't be doing that locally here in Oldham.
Oh no, we won't be doing it locally.
That holding course.
She won't be doing any of the failures locally in Oldham. She just said that. She's just had the audacity to say we won't be cancelling projects or letting you down in Oldham.
And delivering our long-term vision for the borough doesn't mean we aren't listening to what local people are telling us. It's quite the opposite. We know that the investments we make need to be on things that will have an impact on Oldham, socially, culturally and economically. And that means creating things in the people, and that means creating things that people want and will love and use and value for many years to come. A real-life example of this challenge is our plans for a new Coliseum Theatre. As we know, there were many, many people who were shocked and saddened when the Coliseum made the difficult decision to close their doors earlier this year following a loss of council art funding. The continuation of the theatre in Oldham was a commitment I made when I became leader in May, and I will absolutely fight to deliver. As a council, we know how important arts and...
She's trying to say she's on the side of the Coliseum when it's been exposed that her own council lied, deceived the people, riddled with asbestos, they told us. It'd take millions, they said. It needed a set of fire doors. They want the site for building on. No, she says. No plans have been made. No decisions have been made. Who believes her? Who believes her? Even the chicken shops are empty. Even the chicken shops are empty. And I agree with you, Gary. I also think the leader of Oldham Council is not one for telling the truth.
Culture are to local people and to the future vision we have set for our town centre. So despite the challenges faced by Oldham Coliseum, we've held firm to our commitment to build the new theatre that the Coliseum Board have long needed and long requested. Plans for that new theatre were put out...
See, can you see? For those of you who joined me last week when I ripped Jane Barker to pieces, she's still putting forward the narrative that the Coliseum Theatre Board are working in partnership with Oldham Council on this new build, and it's what they want. So all of you involved in trying to keep the old Coliseum going, the old historical building, you can see AROOJ SHAH is goading you, saying, well, the Coliseum Board are working with us. They're fully signed up partners. So if the Coliseum Board, Jane Barker, aren't fully signed up partners, why won't they issue a statement? Oh, it's complicated. It's a very complex matter, Raj. Is it bugger? Is it bugger? The only complex matter I see is what colour the envelopes are and how thick they are.
In consideration recently, and what has been fed into the planning process via petitions and letters and emails has been a real uprising of love for the original Fairbottom Street Theatre building. I know the opposition leader will be glad to hear that because he's expressed the same sentiment. Like in everything we do, we're committing to consider and discuss the concerns and desires raised by those who love the old theatre, to make sure they are addressed and to make sure that we take those people on the journey with us to deliver a new, more sustainable, exciting future for the Oldham Coliseum Theatre as a business. We're due to meet with the Coliseum Board in the next few weeks to take forward these discussions, and we hope to be able to share with you our joint response and jointly agreed plans for the future of performance in Oldham Town Centre. So watch this space for updates on that particular project, but also for the progress on the delivery of our wide-ranging, long-term vision for a better borough, for updates on the continued delivery of our local services that make a real difference to local people's lives in both large and small ways every single day, and for updates on the amazing things that Oldham and the people who live here have to offer us. We, as an administration, will continue to focus on improving the lives of the people who live here and the people that we serve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. This part of the...
Okay. I played the entirety of that because I wanted to be fair. And I wanted to draw to your attention how AROOJ SHAH, the leader of Oldham Council, in her annual speech failed to make any reference to the children her council had failed who had been groomed and gang raped, and they were complicit in covering up what had been done to her. I wanted you to see that for yourself. I wanted you to see that for yourself, and I wanted you to note that omission. Because if I was a councillor in that chamber who had been elected off the back of the sacrifices we've made in campaigning for this, and the risks we've taken, and how we've been demonised. And I'm on about collectively us. If I was Brian Hoban, Lucia Ray, Mark Hince, Maggie Hurley, Sandra Ball, if I was any of those who are now earning tens of thousands of pounds each, £10,000 each, plus whatever kudos it brings, I would be standing up in my question to the leader. I would be standing up in my question to the leader and pointing out a glaring omission. She wants to forget about it, and we cannot allow her to forget about it, because we will not rest until we get justice. So what do these people do?
The agenda is public question, where Council will consider all questions submitted in the order received. Once the time limit expires, no further questions will be asked. There is no right of reply to answers given.
They don't ask anything. They don't hold her to account. Nothing. Nothing. And we move on to the public questions. We move on to public questions. And the joke with public questions, and I'll do public questions like this, the joke with public questions is that it's been reduced to 15 minutes and it's been rigged. And they try and fill it up with Labour Party plants to take up the time. And if we get a question in, more often than not, they don't even answer it. They talk around it. I'm going to get on to public questions. If you're finding value, please like the transmission. It's 5 minutes past 11, or coming up to 5 minutes past 11. There's 273 of you who've been with me this evening so far. If you're finding value in the transmission, so I'm just looking at the phone. I just want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you very much to the 6 people who bought me some coffees, and the 5 or 6 people also who've pressed a super chat or whatever it is on here. So thank you for the 12 people who've supported me this evening from the 274 of you. Public questions. First round of questions are all Labour Party plants. Here, I'll play them so you can hear the question and the names. I don't bother with the responses because they want to kill up time. But we'll get to we managed to get a few in, but here we go.
Reading out the question. If the time limit has expired and a member of the public has submitted the question, the response will be published on the Council's website. The first question has been submitted by Mick Harwood. What can be done to stop idiots vandalizing
Labour
play
Party
areas in Oldham's parks? I call upon Councillor Chris Goodwin to reply. Thank you. The next question is from Connor Green.
Connor Green, Labour Party candidate.
Send provision after the recent Ofsted and CQC inspection.
Lives with his mum.
Call upon Councillor Mohan Ali to reply. Next question is from Meg Birchall.
Meg Birchall, he, she, they, the transgender Labour Party councillor in Delft.
The rest of the borough. Call upon Councillor Shahid Mushtaq to reply. The next question is from Denise Leach. Would the leader of Oldham Council please confirm the number of knife crime incidents that have taken place in Oldham since January 2023 and detail what her council's strategy is to discourage our young people from being influenced by criminals who carry knives? I call upon Councillor Goodwin to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Miss Leash for her question, which I think she's mistakenly attributed to the council leader because community...
No. She did not mistakenly attribute to the council leader. She submitted it to council leader on purpose because perhaps the council leader has a hands-on experience of this. Perhaps she has a closer experience of knife crime, you know, on the basis that Irish Imi is due in court this coming week, isn't he, for possession of an offensive weapon? I think it was believed to be a machete. If that trial goes ahead, it will be, I think, on the 9th of this week. Is it Thursday or Friday this week? So I think Denise Leach knew exactly who she was. Acquaintance. Childhood friend. He doesn't tell you how many knife crimes were registered in Oldham, by the way. And as for the strategy, he just waffles.
It's in my portfolio. The council recognises the significant impact and harm that knife and weapon-enabled crime has on communities and has implemented a number of measures to attempt to reduce such types of behaviour using a mixture of education, intervention and enforcement. This includes using research from the Greater Manchester Violence Reduction Unit, adapting recognised good practice from other areas and listening to residents to establish why they feel the need to carry a knife or other weapon. The responses have included sessions in schools, including presentations to young people and the commissioning of a play regarding knife crime and its effects. The council have also funded commissioned, targeted works with individuals at risk of engaging in knife crime and focusing on messaging around how we are keeping residents safe so they do not feel the need to carry a knife or other weapon. We are also working closely with Greater Manchester Police to identify individuals involved in knife crime, supporting their criminal prosecutions where appropriate by using civil powers such as criminal behaviour orders. The council have also past-funded knife arches at the request of Greater Manchester Police, which were deployed in hotspot locations. With regards to knife crime incidents that have occurred in the borough, this information will be held by Greater Manchester Police, and I would suggest Miss Leach contacts the police directly.
There you go.
Thank you. The next question is from Gary Tarbuck. Can the relevant cabinet member please confirm the total net debt for Oldham Council is forecast for the year 2023-24 and that the total amount anticipated in interest payments to service this debt will be over the current financial year? Call upon Councillor Abdul Jabbar to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Mr. Tarbuck for his latest question for the council finances. The council's debt forecasted is to be 160.996 million at the end of this financial year, and the forecast interest payment to service this debt is 6.5 million. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. The next question is from...
Okay, so you heard that directly, unedited. Question asked about the debt, and he has a selective answer that I've exposed in the emergency transmission I released earlier this week.
Nestor, can the relevant cabinet member please confirm how many racially motivated crimes were recorded in schools in Oldham and provide a breakdown of these crimes as part of this? Can they provide a breakdown of victims and perpetrators by ethnicity? A call upon Councillor Mohanali to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I can thank Mr. Neston for his question as well. While the council encourages schools to report any hate incident, there is no legal requirement for schools to report incidents to the council, nor to report the breakdown of information you have specifically requested in your question. The total number of incidents that have been reported to Oldham Council for the academic year 2022 and 23, so the school year ending July this year, is 195. I welcome your concern.
Okay, 195 hate crimes, right? Racially motivated hate crimes. But apparently, the schools, there's no requirement by the schools or the council to collate the data. Should we not know, in a town such as ours, should we not know what the nature of these racially motivated crimes are? Are they white on black? Are they black on white? Are they black on Asian? Do you understand that surely that level of information is essential if we're going to have an appropriate strategy? His cop-out is schools don't have to give us that data. That's absolute nonsense, because this is a safeguarding issue, and the safeguarding responsibility lies with the council. He thinks he's being smart. Listen to him more.
About any hate incidents happening in schools, but would like to offer reassurance that where these issues occur, they are taken incredibly seriously by schools, who use the local policies to tackle perpetrators and support victims.
So actually we don't know, but we don't know what's going on, but we can assure you that whatever is going on is of the highest quality. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on, but we can assure you that what's being done is the best that can be done. What on earth? What on earth?
Alongside the schools throughout the borough do fantastic work in promoting respect and a culture of zero tolerance for racism.
They do fantastic work. He does not detail what the work is, but it's fantastic.
And hate. During the last week before half term, I know many local schools were taking part in curated activities around Hate Crime Awareness Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you feel reassured, David Nestor? I don't. Any of you feel reassured? This council has no idea of the detail of the racial division in schools amongst young people, but they can assure us that the school's responses are fantastic.
The next question is from Lynn Kovacs. Can the relevant cabinet member please confirm the total number of HMOs in Oldham and how many people are being accommodated in them in total?
So Lynn wants to know how many HMOs there are.
Lynn Taylor to reply.
And how many people are living in them.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Ms Kovacs for her question. There are currently 72 properties that have been licensed as HMOs by Oldham Council. To be licensed as a HMO property, you must have to be licensed as a HMO property, the house must have 5 or more people or 2 or more households sharing facilities. There are also a number of smaller HMOs that do not require licensing under the legislation. And as of August 2022, the Council's monitoring of HMOs identified 331 such properties in the borough. The above equates to just 0.34% of all residential dwellings in the borough.
So she's trying to defend the position. She's trying to defend the HMO position by saying it's only a small percentage of all the houses in the town. We'll say that to someone who lives next door to one, but what she's admitted to is that what they know of the ones that are registered and the ones that aren't unregistered combined is close to 500. 500 and rising. 500 HMOs. Now, how many people are living in those HMOs?
Oldham. This data does not specify the number of people accommodated in each property. Thank you.
So they don't know. They don't know how many people are living in the HMOs. She's trying to minimise it, Gary. She's trying to minimise it. Just like they did with the grooming gangs. They don't like scrutiny, do they? They don't like scrutiny at all. Look at them, and you can also see how nervous they all look. Look at Eddie Moore's on the end. These questions cause them anxiety. These questions cause them anxiety, unease. And we've managed to get question after question after question in despite their attempts to keep us out. We are more effective as the opposition than the opposition councillors we put in there.
Very much. The next question is from Julie Haywood. Can the relevant cabinet member please confirm how many secondary schools in Oldham have gender-neutral toilets? Can they also confirm if risk assessments were conducted to ensure the safety of girls in schools with gender-neutral toilets? I call upon Councillor Mohan Ali to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The provision of toilet facilities is a matter for individual schools, and the council does not hold this information. If, as a parent, Ms. Haywood has questions about provision at her children's school, these can be taken up with the school in question directly. Thank you.
So the council does not care, it does not know, and it does not seem to care whether your daughters are sharing toilets with males who have identified as women. The council does not know, and therefore in my position from the way it's responded does not care. It should do an audit, it should check on the safeguarding, and it should issue guidance. It's not doing. This council, remember the Labour Party position is a woman can have a penis. The Labour Party position is about self-identification. In fact, the Labour Party position, from what I can make out, is that schools will support your children to transition. And I can't figure out whether that support will be with your consent or without your consent or your knowledge. And Julie Haywood is right. It starts with the small things. They get rid of gender-specific toilets. Then they make it acceptable for someone who self-identifies as one gender to use, but biologically a different gender, to use, you know, the opposite biologically. I can't keep up. But I'll tell you what. The first time my daughter comes home saying that the girls blocking whichever secondary school she goes to, someone's walked in and it's a boy who's claiming he's a girl because he's got a penis, that school will know about it from me. It's outrageous. The Labour Party position is outrageous on this. And they can call me a bigot if they want, because I don't believe I'm a bigot. And in fact, I know I'm not a bigot. They can say I'm behind with the times, and perhaps I am behind with the times. But I'm comfortable being behind with the times. There needs to be an urgent audit of all schools, particularly secondary schools in Oldham. There's only 15 or 16 of them anyway, of how many of them have gender-neutral toilets. And I'll work with Julie Haywood in contacting every one of the schools with a Freedom of Information request, and I'll make sure that Julie also makes reference to how Mohan Ali has suggested that she contact these schools directly. Of course, Saddleworth School is turning into an academy. Now that the council taxpayer, the public purse, has paid for the building of the school and the transfer of it, of course it's been privatised, which is essentially what academies are. Maybe it'll go to the Star Academy or whatever it's called, what Harry Caffrell is a board member of. I've yet to come across a single parent who doesn't feel this way, Debbie. I've yet to come across a single parent. The narrative they're pushing is not the narrative I am experiencing. Yeah, I wonder the same, Nikki. I wonder the same.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Anita Love on viewing the council meeting on 6 September and previous live meeting.
Anita,
it's obvious to observe some council member and also those of cabinet while sat in the council chamber using their mobile.
This is important. Anita Law thinks she's being clever and submits a question to do with people looking like they're busy on their phones. They love questions like this because they can laugh at you when you submit questions like this. Have you noticed how none of them were laughing at any of the questions that we submitted? Now here's an Anita Law question. And watch how they respond to her. Watch yourself how they respond to her.
Phones. They have their phones either on the desk in view or sit as through they appear to be asleep with their heads bowed and viewing their devices. The social media must be far more important to be looking at their phones than being interested in what is being spoken about in the chamber by their comrades. Observing councillors on their phone is happening far too often, and it appears as though they are not interested in the meeting, as all we see is head bowed. My question is, can all councillors and staff please refrain from using their social media devices while in the chamber? Switch them off or out of sight. After all, they may learn something. I call upon Councillor Mohan to reply.
Mr. Mayor, while I accept it may seem to an outside observer that those using their phones aren't paying attention, in reality the very opposite may be true. Councillors and council staff use their phones, tablets and other devices to access information, to read agendas and reports, and to gather information in response to queries raised during meetings. In fact, as you would be aware, we are actively discouraging our members from using printed copies of reports and agendas to save us money and time in printing. Far from being a distraction, mobile devices of all sorts are now an essential tool in many settings. Thank you.
Councillor Ali, I truly trust and have faith in your answer. Thank you. The next question is from Carl Fadian.
You can see they're laughing. That is the caliber of questions that they want from the public. That is what they want. And I left that in on purpose so you can see how Anita Lowe was mocked. And she was mocked because that was just, it's perfect for them. It's perfect for them. Next question is from Carl Piffian, I think he says, who is the former Labour Party councillor, who's Jim McMahon's assistant, whose father, Clint Piffian, was also kicked out. I don't know if he's standing again in Royton North this time.
Failsworth Town Hall is now offering a range of services to the community. When will other parts of the Oldham benefit from these community hubs? I call upon Councillor Peter Dean to reply. Thank you, public, for very precise questions, and relevant cabinet members for precise answers. We managed to get through loads of questions, which is very healthy and useful. Thank you.
I was alarmed, as I'm sure.
Okay, so that's the end of public questions. Now it goes on to, for those of you still with me, yeah, okay, yeah, you're still with me, 283 of you. Please, if you're finding value in the transmission, at least press like. At least press the like button. I will go through this last bit and then we'll call it quits for tonight, which is the leaders' questions. It's the questions, and I think it's imperative that you listen to this. So these questions, some are pre-prepared, but others are as a consequence of what's gone on. And the obvious question should have been, why did the leader not make any reference to the confirmed failure to protect our children and what has been done since? Because surely any leader in this town, particularly as the last 3 leaders have all been taken out on this issue, why did she omit it from her council leader speech, the annual speech? Graham Sheldon, the leader of the opposition, sets off. And do you know what his question is? He's read in the newspaper something about 10,000 cyber attacks on Oldham Council's web pages. Like what?
Many of our residents were to hear Councillor Jabbar reveal at a recent cabinet meeting that there are around 10,000 cyber attacks on this council's systems every single day. This one's a bit more of a general question.
So he has 2 questions. So that was his first question. I ignored AROOJ SHAH's response because she enjoyed it. She enjoyed like, oh, hello Graham. He's wet. He's a completely ineffective leader of the opposition. He's absolutely useless. He's absolutely useless.
A good education is vital for the development of young people, and part of that is ensuring that our young people are in the classroom as much as possible. Unfortunately, recent statistics highlight that this is not happening as much as we would like.
So his second question... Sorry, I missed it out there. Let me get it.
Cyber attacks on this council's systems every single day. This one's a bit more of a general
second question. It's to do with truancy in schools.
A good education is vital for the development of young people, and part of that is ensuring that our young people are in the classroom as much as possible. Unfortunately, recent statistics highlight that this is not happening as much as we would.
So he reads out a series of statistics that someone's passed him. But you've heard Mohan Ali say, schools do their own thing. Yeah, schools do their own thing. So why is he asking this question? How is this a pertinent question right now? I want to draw your attention to something else. Behind Graham is the woman who will become likely our next chief executive. She's already been on this development program 2 days a week with the poppy on. Emma Barton. The woman in the middle with the glasses. Next to her is a blonde-haired woman. If people can tell me who she is, I would find that really useful. This blonde-haired woman attended a public meeting at the beginning of a cover-up, exposing the cover-up into the gang rape of children at the Hollingwood Centre. And masqueraded as a member of the public. My understanding is she took video footage, recorded footage, and then tried to use it to have people suspended from political parties and so on. That's her next to Emma Barton. She appears, well she is, she's a council officer. She's a council officer. And if it is found, and there'll be witnesses, because you're all in that meeting, Moms, many of you are in that meeting with Debbie Barrett-Cole. Is that the woman who was in that meeting recording you? Let's carry on with the silly man's questions.
Mike. Last year alone, there were over 9,000 persistent absentees in Oldham, meaning they missed more than 10% of sessions, and over 700 pupils who missed over 50% of sessions. In total, Oldham's total number of unauthorised absences rose to a staggering figure of more than 570,000, the highest in Greater Manchester. The rate of unauthorised absence has been on the rise for several years too. That is a significant loss in learning for those pupils and a concerning trend for our borough. Will the leader of the council join me in reminding students and their guardians, parents, of the importance of attendance at school, and to raise this issue with the schools to see what more can be done to stop this worrying trend in truancy? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So that's his second question. The leader of the opposition's second question is to remind, he wants to remind parents of the importance of sending their children to school. And Gary asked for Jackie Stanton, knowing who that woman is. Jackie Stanton is one of the many people who silently listen to this or watch these transmissions, but daren't put her name down or respond publicly. Aren't you, Jackie? You're one of the many who do that. I'm done with people like that, Gary Tarbuck. So that was his second question. Nothing on the omission of AROOJ SHAH. Now you can say they were pre-prepared questions. Clearly they were pre-prepared questions. But what he should have done was at least change the second question. And called her out for it. Challenged her on it. Because that's what you want the opposition to do. He's not challenging anyone. He just wants her to agree with him. The worst form of opposition you can get. I don't understand how the Conservatives can have him as their leader. I don't understand it. Who voted him as their leader?
Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Schools work really, really hard to increase school attendance, and we support them with that.
Schools work really, really hard, yeah, and we support them. So now we support them. Not that they do things of their own, but listen to this nonsense.
Work and non-attendance is also sometimes a concern from a safeguarding perspective as well, so it is a real concern from a social care perspective too, but definitely I will join you in raising concerns around that and see what more we can do collectively. Thank you.
See, it's a lovely question.
That was a very easy question.
See,
Councillor Sykes.
Even the mayor gives Sheldon a slap. That was a very easy question. Even the mayor gives Sheldon a slap.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is about places for everyone. Residents and other stakeholders have the opportunity to share views on Labour's latest version of the plan to build on Greenbelt until the 6th of December, and I would encourage them to do so. Despite what we've heard from Labour leaders before, and despite what no doubt we'll hear again tonight, the Places for Everyone strategy will do nothing to tackle the housing crisis which the leader spoke so eloquently about earlier. Expensive luxury housing on our Greenbelt, palaces for everyone, is not the answer for families and our young people struggling to get onto the housing ladder. The latest round of modifications that have gone out for consultation make a damning read. Virtually every commitment on infrastructure development and community building has either been watered down or abandoned. Labour are asking people in Oldham to surrender our green belt space in return for no new investment in roads, no proportionate contribution to new healthcare services and no new school places. Liberal Democrats have consistently called for a brownfield first approach to housing development. It's a challenge. I make no bones about that. It requires hard work to get the right developments on our ex-industrial heritage buildings and to achieve the right mix of housing types. We need more social rents as well as more starter homes. So I want to hear the leader's answer tonight. If, after the next round of local elections, if one of the 9 councils were to remove itself from Places for Everyone, will that be curtains for this unwanted and misguided plan?
So it's a very specific question around Places for Everyone, or Palaces for Everyone, as Howard Sykes mocks it. The Lib Dems, I'm not a Lib Dem fan, as you all know. Definitely not a Howard Sykes fan. Pre-prepared question, but it's relevant because the Places for Everyone consultation is currently ongoing. And they'll railroad it through. They'll build on the green belt. And the Lib Dems have been consistently in opposition to building on the green belt. A contrary position to Mark Hince and the Shaw Independents, a contrary position to Brian Hoban and the Failsworth Independents, and a contrary position to Maggie Hurley because she's part of the independent group that Mark Hince leads. And the Oldham Conservatives have been consistently opposed to building on the green belt. So if another local authority pulls out, will that be curtains for it, and will we pull out? Because we fundamentally want the powers for ourselves to decide where we build our houses. We don't want Andy Burnham to decide which areas of our green belt is built on. That's what the fundamental argument is. We don't want to build on any in our green belt. We want to build on our brownfield sites first. And build the houses that the people in this town need, rather than the builder houses that the council want to draw revenue from. They're not one and the same. They're very, very different. So that's the question.
Thank you, Councillor Sykes. It is a plan for future housing development to build thousands of new houses, so it is part of the solution, but it is absolutely right. I do agree with Councillor Sykes, it's not everything. But we know affordability is an issue. We do have a brownfield first policy. We do need a plan, otherwise developers would build wherever they wanted without any acknowledgement and with no controls that we'd have. And if we did pull out of the Place for Everyone, it wouldn't go through anyway, so it would make no sense to do that at all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Sykes, for your question.
She doesn't even answer. If we pulled out, it would make no sense. So deciding where we build our houses would make no sense. And she claims the developers would then build wherever they want. No, because we, as the council, would have something called a planning committee. And these developers fill in forms and ask for planning permission. And then the decision would be with our planning committee that our councillors sit on. Is that not how it's meant to work? What am I missing here? Maybe a brown envelope or a green envelope. I don't know. A shisha envelope. I have no idea what I'm missing here. But I'm clearly missing something as to why a council that represents a community that want more control over what is built in their area, in their town, in their community, would say, we want to give that power to someone else. Even though, having done that, it's been demonstrated that the decisions that are being made aren't in the best interest of our town. I don't understand it. And I'm with the Lib Dems on this. I'm genuinely with the Lib Dems on this. Let me get a drink. I'd wash my mouth out if I could. We're 20 to 12. Let's finish the questions.
Thank you. Councillor Hoban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I don't wish to, while I don't wish to jump on the bandwagon of the major parties with trying to do away with people driving the cars, I'm sure that most councillors do have issues with their residents and parking, and I just wondered whether the council could do anything with regards to that, and more enforcement, especially around our schools, where the safety of our children should be more important than where a parent parks a car.
Thank you. Councillor Shah.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hoban, for your question, and I think it's a really, really fitting question as well. Dense parking is an issue throughout Oldham. I don't know what the answer is, because you see more and more people travelling for work. You see like more than one car per household, which isn't helpful either. But we do have enforcement safety cars that do travel around school opening and closing times, and we have safer school streets as well, and we're trialling them across some of them schemes across the borough to eliminate some of that. But absolutely a fantastic question. More does need to be done. Essentially, we just need to be we need people to be more responsible, and I think your concerns are valid, and we do need to address the parking issue, but I just don't see how we can do it when so many people have so many cars in one household now. We should encourage, for health purposes, walking and cycling where you can.
AROOJ SHAH doesn't walk, doesn't cycle. She wants to encourage us. She's relieved, she's happy that Brian Hoban has asked her a question as simple as that. Oh yeah, there's too many cars on the streets. I don't know what to do. Yes, there are too many parents go to school, will drive their kids to school, park near the schools. AROOJ SHAH's response, yeah, too many cars. We have houses with more than one car. Of course we have houses with more than one car. More than one person works. Dense parking. She's relieved and agreeing with him, because that was the first genuine place after Sheldon where a question could and should have been asked about her annual speech and her failure to reference the council's failures on safeguarding our children from the rape gangs. Brian Hoban was elected on that. His entire team were elected off the back of that. That was the chance to do it, and he hasn't, so she's relieved, which is why she's saying it's a very, very nice question. It's a very, very nice question.
And a great deal of infrastructure is being put in place in the next few years to make sure that that is made easier for people. And, you know, so absolutely agree with what Councillor Hoban's question was.
Yeah, agree with him. And of course, we're going to be doing things in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Hince.
Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Residents rightly expect the council to both give them a voice and implement available due process when it comes to changes which impact on their environment and community. At the moment, HMOs, as highlighted before, with 6 bedrooms or less, do not need to go through the planning application process, meaning any house on any street can be converted without any consideration or consultation to those it may negatively affect. Aspects as basic as parking are not even given consideration. As the leader knows, just as they have done in other Labour-run councils, such as Salford and Bolton, the council can resolve this by an Article 4 direction, removing permitted development rights, meaning such developments has to go through the planning application process. My question on behalf of the residents of not just Shaw and Crompton, but the borough is, will the leader do the right thing and seek to implement Article 4 direction across the borough as per the Conservative amendment to our independent motion. Thank you.
Right. What this muppet, and he's an absolute muppet, is stood up and said in his question is he wants to know if the council will support the motion that people will be voting on in a little while. Why would you waste your question on that when there's a vote coming anyway? And she will raise her hand up or not on the vote and likely speak on the vote in the discussion up to the vote. Why would you waste a question on that instead of raising an issue? Remember, the independent group claimed they were the champions of CSE, of tackling CSE. Big team Hurley, Hince and Ball claimed that. He could have and he should have held it to account there. He didn't. He then doesn't even ask him, and it's stupid. What he's asking is stupid. Politically, what he's asking is stupid, and you'll see by the smirking and the laughing in his direction, it's stupid. But what he's asking for is, will you support the amendment that the Conservatives have done to our motion? So not even our motion, because our motion wasn't good enough, because we exposed his motion for playing lip service and trying to dupe the members of the public. We exposed his motion. We exposed Mark Hince's motion for being a scam. So what he is now desperate, because we exposed it the night before, he's desperately stood up to say, will you support the Conservative amendment to our motion? What an idiot. Will you support the other party's amendment to our motion? Do you realise how much of an imbecile that makes you look like? Forget that you don't even ask that question, because you know you've wasted your opportunity to hold them to account, because that motion is being voted on later. So it's not political naivety, it's political stupidity. And then he makes himself a laughing stock. Makes himself a laughing stock by saying, will you support the Conservative amendment to our motion? Because we weren't bright enough to come up with the motion ourselves. Hince, you absolute clown. You absolute clown. And speaking loudly isn't going to make any difference. You only sound a louder clown. Absolute imbecile. Complete charlatan. And this is her response. Watch. Don't believe me, watch.
Councillor Shah.
Thank you, Councillor Hince, for your question.
Look at her.
These things do take time, I have to say. I do agree with elements of what Councillor Hince has raised, but some of that change needs to change national planning policy as well. We have lobbied the MPs in the past, and they're aware of the concerns in this area, and we're raising it continuously. We are already looking into Article 4, but we need to meet the criteria, which is not really easy to meet. The threshold is extremely, extremely high. It's not as simple as just implementing it overnight. These things do take time. We are correlating evidence to see whether we can meet that threshold, but obviously it will take some time, but I will keep Councillor Hince updated.
Thank you very much. Now move to the next section, which is I invite the cabinet members to present their report.
Did you see the smirk on her face? Did you all see the smirk on her face? There's a question that they responded to that I want to bring up. It's a question submitted by Carl Bardsley that they responded in writing to. I think it's important. And I'll finish on this. Carl Bardsley's question on the 13th of September was in a recent news report in the Manchester Evening News about how over 500 children were abused in Oldham in 2022 alone. I would like to ask the relevant cabinet member the following questions. 1. What concrete measures and policies do our local councillors plan to implement to address the failure to preventing child abuse within our community? 2. How will they ensure accountability and support those affected children and families moving forward? 3. Also, do you agree with me that Mr. Gerard Jones has failed Oldham's children and should now resign? I agree with Carl Barsley, particularly his third section. The figure quoted in the MEN relates to the number of referrals received by a multi-agency safeguarding hub on children and young people potentially at risk or believed to have suffered harm. This does not mean that the number of children and young people experiencing abuse has increased, but that it is being reported more often than previously was the case. That's not true. This does not mean that the number of children and young people experiencing abuse has increased, nor does it mean that they're reporting it more than was previously the case, because we know that where they were previously reporting it, the police and the council were telling victims to go away. They weren't recording crimes. We know that. So we know the council can't make that assertion. We believe that this is due to increased public and professional awareness of all forms of child abuse, including CSC and abuse, as a direct result of the work of the council and its safeguarding partners. Bollocks. The increased public awareness is a direct consequence of what we've done. It's not what the council has done. In addition, mechanisms for reporting child criminal exploitation have improved. No, they haven't. And this has allowed us to capture more data. Previously, this has been a challenge for all local authorities. So we're blaming everyone else. So has that answered any other questions? What concrete measures and policies do our local councillors plan to implement? No, it doesn't. It doesn't answer that at all. How will they ensure accountability and support for effective children and families moving forward? The response is, in terms of work we do to prevent child abuse, Oldham Council Safeguarding Partnership's priority is the safety of our young people. Well, seeing as though it's the Children's Safeguarding Partnership, I'd assume your priority is the safeguarding of young people, but that's not the question, is it? That's why it has robust procedures in place should any member of the public or professionals believe that CSE is taking place. It does not say what the robust procedures are or why the council believes they're robust. Our child protection teams respond immediately to any possible risk of harm. Well, how did they respond immediately? Did they go out? Did they speak to the kid? Did they put the kid in a safe place? How did they respond immediately? Did they go and put the kettle on? Putting a kettle on is an immediate response. Our complex safeguarding hub is dedicated to supporting children and young people at high risk of exploitation. What does that mean? Dedicated. How is it dedicated? What actions does it specifically do? Doesn't. The unit comprises of social work, health professionals, psychologists and police officers who work together to tackle all forms of child exploitation. What do they do? The work of the hub has been praised by inspectors as part of our regional peer review. Is that the regional peer review that puts you in special measures? See? Nothing. The council is working closely with a local charity keeping our girls safe. They pay them, I think, £20,000 a year. It's not even enough to hire a part-time worker. We also have a dedicated training officer who works with schools and colleges to ensure that children and young people, parents and professionals are fully aware of what exploitation is and how to safeguard against it. Okay, fine. Now they're saying they've got a dedicated training officer. Well, then how many schools has that training officer been in? How many young people has that training officer trained? How many parents and professionals has it supported? What is the actual content of the training that this training officer delivers? Bullshit. Do you see? In addition to this, we publish communications year-round across council channels on how to spot the signs of CSE. No, you don't. You do it in this most generic form and not the one that's specific to the ones we're talking about, which is the rape gangs. Sadly, there will always be predatory, evil individuals in society and who will seek to abuse others. The council is working hard to prevent this. The council has put in place a CSE exploitation steering group which oversees our progress, and it lists the priorities. How many offenders have you brought to justice? 0. How many survivors of CSE have you supported? Well, from what I can see, it's 0. To provide assurance and current safeguarding practice, who have you provided this assurance to? To ensure cross-party involvement and oversight. Cross-party involvement and oversight of what? To raise public awareness of child sexual abuse. How? Where? When? We are working closely with our partners, blah, blah, blah. Nonsense, yeah? In addition to this, a Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel has been established. And they're good at creating panels and groups, aren't they? And a performance subgroup. External scrutiny. Nonsense. Finally, the Greater Manchester Assurance Review is examining current safeguarding practice in relation to CSE across all 10 local authorities, including Oldham, to ensure that our response to safeguarding children and people at risk of identifying as experiencing exploitation abuse is of a high standard. Well, what standard is it currently of? What standard do you think it's currently of, Oldham Council? Our current children's leadership team has invested and promoted our work with children and young people at risk of exploitation and ensured that the complex safeguarding hub is equipped to respond. Oldham is a much safer place as a result of the work we have undertaken. No, if Oldham is a much safer place and they avoid answering the question, should Gerard Jones resign? Actually, I think he should be sacked. Actually, I think he should be sacked for misleading, covering up, exposed by Andy Burnham's own team. This is an absolute joke of a response, which goes back to where I started this. They think it's gone away and they can just carry on. And the reason why they think it's gone away and they can carry on is that the councillors we have put in that chamber, the independent councillors we have put in that chamber, have betrayed us. They betrayed each and every one of you. And that is what I will go into specific detail on in the second part of this transmission, where you can see it for yourself. We'll be able to see it for yourself. Thank you very, very much for joining me. It's midnight. It's just coming up to midnight. I started at 9 o'clock, and that was after a full day. If you find value in my work, I think 12 of you have bought me a coffee or something. If you find value in my work, please support me. Please sign up to the newsletter. It's £3 a month. You've got the links. You all take value in the work, otherwise you wouldn't be here on a Sunday night at midnight still watching me, still listening to me. I hope to be back tomorrow, and if not, it'll be Tuesday night for the second part of this transmission. Mark Hince, Maggie Hurley, Sandra Ball. Big team. Watch what I do to you.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.